Welcome to Crime Bowl Podcast. We got a gruesome one for you today. Let's not waste any time. Bullies. Let's solve some crime.
Oh.
We're diving deep into a case that's as cold as it is baffling.
Oh, yeah.
The murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond back in 2014.
Back in 2014.
Picture this, a tranquil gated community on Lake Oconee, Georgia, seemingly a world away from the darkness that was about to unfold.
A world away.
Really is.
It really is. You know what makes this case particularly intriguing and, let's be honest, chilling?
Yeah.
Is the lack of any obvious motive, the sheer brutality of the crime itself, and the strange circumstances surrounding their deaths.
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle with a lot of missing pieces.
And those missing pieces make it all the more fascinating.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You've got Russell found decapitated in his garage.
Oh, God.
A scene straight out of a horror movie.
Straight out.
Then 10 days later, Shirley's body turns up miles away, weighted down in the lake.
In the lake.
I mean, what are we even dealing with?
And
now?
it's a lot to unpack, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And you're right, those details, especially the distance between where the bodies were found, suggest a level of premeditation and planning that isn't usually seen in crimes of passion.
Yeah.
Whoever did this took their time, and they knew what they were doing.
Okay, so before we go full on Sherlock Holmes here,
Okay.
let's rewind and get a sense of who the Dermonds were.
Right.
They weren't some high-flying power couple or anything. They were in their late 80s, retired, enjoying a peaceful life in this community for over a decade.
Exactly.
For over a decade.
And everyone who knew them described them as quiet, friendly, the kind of folks who kept to themselves but always had a smile for their neighbors. Not the type you'd expect to be caught up in something this horrific.
Which is what makes it so unsettling.
Yes.
Right?
It is.
You think of a gated community.
Right.
You think of safety.
Secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this case really throws a wrench into that perception.
It really does.
And it gets even more bizarre when you look at the timeline. It all starts on May 6th, 2014. Some friends of the Dermonds hadn't heard from them in a few days, which was unusual, so they decided to go check on them.
Right.
And that's when they stumbled upon the scene in the garage.
Oh, my gosh.
Russell, decapitated, no sign of a struggle.
Wow.
Shirley, vanished.
No trace. No trace.
It's enough to make your blood run cold just thinking about it.
Yeah. It's a horrifying discovery, no doubt.
Yeah.
And I imagine that for the investigators, it immediately raised a ton of questions.
Oh, yeah. Tons of questions.
Like, where do you even begin to piece together what happened?
Absolutely.
Right.
You've got a deceased male, a missing female, a crime scene that offers few clues. It's a logistical nightmare and an emotional one for everyone involved, especially for the friends who made that discovery.
Of course.
And the mystery just deepens when 10 agonizing days later, Shirley's body is found in Lake Oconee.
Miles from the house.
Miles.
Weighted down with concrete blocks.
With concrete blocks.
I mean, that's not something you just stumble into. This wasn't a random act of violence.
Right.
This was planned, executed with chilling precision.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
The method of disposal, the distance involved, it all speaks to premeditation and, frankly, a chilling level of coldness on the part of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And then there's the cause of death for Shirley.
Yeah.
Blunt force trauma to the head, a completely different method than what was used on Russell.
So we're not even dealing with a consistent MO here. Two victims, two drastically different approaches. It's like we're dealing with two separate crimes that just happen to be tragically intertwined.
It's a puzzle within a puzzle, and that's what makes this case so fascinating to unpack.
Right.
Let's delve into the crime scenes themselves, starting with Russell's no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle.
Okay.
In fact, the house was largely undisturbed, almost eerily so.
And if I remember correctly, his wallet and personal belongings were left untouched.
That's right.
It's like the killer was there for one reason and one reason only. It immediately throws a wrench into the idea of a robbery gone wrong. If valuables weren't the motive, then what was? It's a question that has haunted this case from day one.
Right. And then there's Shirley's crime scene, if you could even call it that.
Right.
Her body being found miles away in the lake.
Right.
It implies that whoever did this not only knew the area, but also had access to transportation and the means to weigh down a body.
That's not your average opportunistic criminal.
No.
Exactly. It suggests a level of forethought of resources that goes beyond what you'd expect in a spur-of-the-moment act. This was calculated almost like a military operation in its execution.
So here we are, a seemingly idyllic community turned upside down.
Upside down.
Two brutal murders with no apparent motive.
Yeah.
And a trail of clues that seems to lead Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Where do we even begin to make sense of this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that has baffled investigators for years. The lack of a clear motive, the contrasting methods used on the victims, the sheer audacity of it all, it's enough to make even the most seasoned detective scratch their head. It's a true crime enigma, that's for sure. And like any good mystery, it spawned a number of theories, each with its own set of strengths and weaknesses. Let's start with the one that jumps out at most people, the professional hit theory.
Yeah, when you consider the level of violence, especially the decapitation, it's hard not to think that we're dealing with someone who knows their way around, well, let's just say unpleasant situations.
Precisely. The clean cut used on Russell, the way Shirley's body was weighted down, it suggests a level of expertise, a familiarity with violence that you wouldn't expect from an amateur. A professional would know how to make a clean kill, how to dispose of a body, effectively minimizing the chances of leaving behind trace evidence.
It's almost like they were following a playbook, right? But that raises the question, who would order a hit on an elderly couple living a quiet life in retirement? It just doesn't seem to fit the typical profile of a hit target.
That's the biggest hole in this theory, isn't it? The Dermonds, from all accounts, were just regular folks. They weren't involved in organized crime. They weren't wealthy beyond their comfortable retirement savings. There's no obvious reason why anyone would want them dead, let alone go to such lengths to make it happen.
It's like someone took a page out of a crime novel and just dropped it into this peaceful community. So if it wasn't a hit, what else could explain the precision and planning we see in this case? Could we be dealing with mistaken identity?
It's a possibility, albeit a remote one. Mistaken identity usually involves crimes of opportunity, a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This, on the other hand, feels targeted personal. The killers knew where the Dermonds lived. They knew their routine. They were prepared.
So it's not just about getting the address wrong. It's of the level of knowledge and preparation that went into this whole thing. It's like they were studying the Dermonds almost like a predator stalking its prey. Which brings us to another theory, one that's particularly unsettling: information extraction gone wrong.
Ah, yes, the theory that the killers were after something that Russell possessed, information perhaps, or something valuable that only he knew about.
And when he refused to cooperate, things escalated.
Exactly. They resorted to violence, eliminating Russell and then abducting Shirley potentially as leverage or to prevent her from identifying them.
But why kill Shirley, too? If she was just a means to an end, wouldn't it have made more sense to release her? Maybe even threaten her into silence?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But remember, we're not dealing with rational actors here. Perhaps they panicked, perhaps they were afraid she could still lead the police to them, or maybe, and this is the truly disturbing thought, they were just enjoying inflicting pain, eliminating any loose ends.
Okay, that's a thought I'm going to try and push out of my mind right now. Okay, so we've got three main theories on the table: the professional hit mistaken identity and this information extraction gone wrong. As someone who spent years analyzing cases like this, what are your thoughts? What stands out to you?
Each theory has its own set of problems, doesn't it? The professional hit theory, as we discussed, lacks a clear motive. Mistaken identity, while possible, seems unlikely given the targeted nature of the attacks.
And the information extraction theory, while intriguing, feels a bit like we're filling in the blanks with speculation.
Exactly. We're left with a lot of what-ifs and very few concrete answers. And that's precisely what makes this case so frustrating, yet so fascinating. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, where some of the pieces are missing, and those missing pieces are the key to understanding the whole picture.
And without those pieces, we're left with a sense of unease, a feeling that there's a story here that's waiting to be told, but the narrator has gone silent.
A chilling thought, isn't it? But let's not forget that even the coldest of cases can sometimes thaw. New evidence can surface, witnesses can come forward, and with advancements in forensic technology, what seems impossible today might be solvable tomorrow.
Hope for a resolution even after all these years, that's
Yeah.
something to hold on to, I guess. But let's be realistic here. The investigators faced a lot of challenges right from the start.
They certainly did. Despite a $45,000 reward being offered, no credible leads ever materialized.
And the fact that this happened in a gated community, you'd think there would be security footage galore.
You would, wouldn't you? But as it turns out, the surveillance system in place at the time was limited, leaving investigators with very little to go on.
It's almost as if whoever did this knew the limitations of the security system and used it to their advantage. And then there's the location itself, Lake Oconee, a beautiful sprawling area. It's a paradise for those who live there. but a nightmare for investigators trying to track down a killer.
Absolutely. The rural setting, the numerous access points, the sheer size of the lake itself, it all provided ample opportunity for someone to disappear without a trace. It's as if they vanished into the landscape swallowed whole by the beauty and tranquility that drew the Dermonds to this place in the first place.
Talk about irony, right? The very things that make a place feel safe and secure can also work against you in a situation like this. And it's not just the physical challenge that the investigators had to contend with.
No, there's also the human element, the emotional toll that a case like this takes on everyone involved. The Dermond family left with unanswered questions and a gaping hole in their lives.
It's true, they say sometimes the questions are more powerful than the answers, and in this case, the questions keep swirling, don't they?
They do.
We've got professional hitmen, mistaken identities, information extraction gone wrong, all these theories that just don't quite fit.
It's a testament to the complexity of human behavior, isn't it? That even after all this time, with all the advancements in forensics and investigative techniques, we're still left with a puzzle we can't fully solve.
Right.
And maybe that's part of what draws us to true crime. The challenge of understanding the darkest corners of the human psyche, the motivations that drive people to commit acts that defy logic and reason.
I think you're right. There's a certain fascination, a morbid curiosity, perhaps, in trying to unravel the thought process of someone who could do something as heinous as this. But for me, what really sticks out in this case is the contrast. You've got this tranquil setting, this idyllic community, and then this brutal act of violence that just shatters that peace. It's almost like a violation, a reminder that darkness can find its way into even the most seemingly protected corners of our lives.
It's a stark reminder of our own vulnerability, isn't it? That no matter how many security systems we install or how carefully we choose our neighborhoods, there's always an element of the unknown, a possibility that things can go wrong in ways we can't even imagine. And that's where the true horror lies, I think. Not in the act itself, but in the realization that something like this could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time.
It's a sobering thought, and it makes you wonder what kind of impact does a case like this have on a community, especially a close-knit one like Great Waters.
Imagine living in a place where you feel safe, secure, where your neighbors are your friends, and then suddenly that sense of security is shattered. It's like a crack in the foundation, a breach in the walls that were meant to keep the darkness out.
So even if they never catch the person or persons responsible, the damage is already done. The fear lingers, the suspicion, the constant reminder that evil can lurk in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike.
And for the Berman family, the lack of closure must be excruciating, not knowing who took their parents, why they did it.
Right.
It's a wound that may never fully heal. It's a burden they carry with them every day, a constant weight on their hearts and minds.
And that brings us back to where we started, doesn't it?
It does.
The questions, the unanswered questions that hang over this case like a cloud. Was it a professional? A case of mistaken identity, a robbery gone terribly wrong? We may never know for sure.
But that doesn't mean we stop asking the questions. It doesn't mean we stop searching for answers, no matter how elusive they may seem, because in the pursuit of justice, in the attempt to make sense of the senseless, we find a glimmer of hope, a testament to the enduring human spirit, the refusal to let darkness have the final say.
So, bullies, what do you think, after diving deep into this perplexing case, what stands out to you, what theories resonate with you, what questions keep you up at night? Let us know your thoughts, because every perspective, every insight might just be the missing piece that helps us crack this case wide open. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, by keeping the conversation alive, by refusing to let this case fade into obscurity, we can help bring some measure of peace and closure to those who have been most affected by this tragedy.
And remember, even the smallest detail could be the key to unlocking this mystery. If you have any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please contact the authorities. Justice for the Dermonds is long overdue.
True crime, no bull.